We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully your day is going well. It is Saturday, and finally, been a lot of people bugging me about it. Ed is back. He's been gone for a few weeks. We've had vacations and holidays and just other shit. And Ed and I haven't been able to connect, but here you are. Thank you for coming back. I know people have been waiting to hear from you.
Well, I'm pleased to be back, quite frankly. I mean, yeah, I missed it. But yeah, sometimes the things just don't come together right. And I'm glad back. Now that I'm snowed in here in Tennistan, I'm free and available.
It seems kind of odd to say that two retired guys can't find the time to connect on Zoom. That seems a little fucked up as far as I'm concerned, but nonetheless, we are here. And you're talking about Tennessee. Here I am in Minnesota, where you used to live. It is cold as shit. It's about 3 degrees, but it's going to get warmer next week. We maybe have an inch of snow on the ground. You're in Tennessee, and it's decidedly different than what you're used to and what we have here.
Yeah, we had actually 1 degree below zero
Wow.
over in the last few days, and we had 6 to 8 inches of snow, which caught the entire state flat-footed, and especially the county I live in. It's impassable, really. I mean, I was out yesterday because I know how to drive in the snow, and Food City was open with about 2 employees who made it in. So took me a little while to get checked out and so forth. But all the restaurants, everything, every business in town is closed, and they haven't even cleaned in front of their businesses, which, in Minnesota, if you didn't clean up within 24 hours, they sent people to do it for you and charged you for it. So, right. But, here in Freedom, Bill, we are free from anything that makes sense. Yeah.
You got to be a unicorn or something of interest down there. Here you are in Tennessee. You brought down some snow blowers from Minnesota down to Tennessee. You know how, there's Ed, there's Ed with a snow blower blowing off the sidewalk, and people are going, what the fuck is that wizardry? And then, of course,
it's true.
And you get in the car and you're doing fine. And, 3 inches of snow ain't shit up here. So you get in the car and you're doing fine. People must think you're the second coming.
Yeah, well, I don't know. They'll probably canonize me any day here. But
start a cult.
There you go. I hadn't thought of that. There's good money in cults.
There is. Possible jail time, too, but plenty of money in
cult. Yeah. Well, as long as you're not, toxic about it, you can have your code. There's a lot of cults around, man. They've been around so long, we don't think of them as cults anymore. Like I don't know, Herbalife.
Mormonism. There's a lot of cults around. People always ask me, where can I find Ed? And we usually talk about it at the end of the show, but I want to talk about it on the front of the show. Ed is on TikTok, and if you're not watching him on TikTok, what the fuck is wrong with you? You should. It's not politically, well, maybe somewhat politically motivated.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Just depends.
Ed's quite a storyteller, has a great voice, and you were telling me about one you've got out there now that people need to check out.
Yeah, this is one I don't remember when I first learned about it, but you don't learn about this in school, and nobody references it for some reason. It's called the Powell memorandum, and it was written by the future Justice Lewis Powell of the Supreme Court back in 1971. It was a memo that he addressed to the education chairman or the chairman of the American Chamber of Commerce Education Committee. It was a secret memo that he sent out where he announced that the American economic system was under attack from things, from dark forces like Ralph Nader or regulatory agencies or the media. He just saw everybody dumping on the business community. Now, the surprising thing is he was a Democrat. And he voted for Roe versus Wade. He voted for voting rights. He hit all the normal liberal causes and so forth. But he was pretty much like a Joe Manchin in that he was a conservative Democrat who had worked. Joe's got his coal companies. And Lewis Powell had his tobacco companies. That's who he worked for. And he argued, like, for example, they should be able to use their First Amendment rights to supply false information to consumers, that there was nothing wrong with that. But anyway, in this memo, he said, we got to get our shit together. All of the corporations and all of the trade groups and all of the rich people have to kick in money, 10% of their earnings, and turn this around. And that's where things like the Heritage Institute got started, and ALEC, and all of these right-wing think tanks and political action committees all stem from that memo. And you can see what happened. Now, he was then, that was 71. 72, he was appointed to the Supreme Court by a Republican president, Richard Nixon. I wonder why.
Yeah.
And it kind of all stems from that. I wonder. A surprising thing, he did support unions and collective bargaining, and he ends his memo with a really hopeful note. But I'm not going to tell you what he said, because I want you folks to come to my TikTok.
The teaser.
Yes, at Holler Troll, and you'll find it there, and follow me, because I got a lot of good stuff on there. I've built up quite a backlog, and most of it doesn't go out of date because it's, it's reminiscences and that sort of thing. But
right. That's the wonderful thing about what Ed does. The thing that sucks about what I do, Ed can put out a very good story, and if you're old enough, it's reminiscent of Paul Harvey and those sorts of things. But they're great stories. They have morals. They give you information that you didn't have. I watch them all the time, and I get information I haven't seen. And as he said on TikTok, he's at Holler Troll, HOLLERTROLL. But you're also on YouTube, right?
Yeah, I do reels on it. Oh, YouTube, yeah, it's Reelin in the Years with an apostrophe. Reelin, REALIN apostrophe, in the years.
So there are people right now watching this podcast on YouTube. So when you get done watching this podcast, I want you to go check out Reelin in the Years. I think you'll find it entertaining, and it'll be a nice break from my bullshit.
Yeah, I'm going to put the I'll put the Lewis Powell thing up there today. But you can, in the meantime, you can read about how Stephen King wrote a book about me.
About you?
Yeah.
Literally?
Not specifically. No, he's got a book called Hearts in Atlantis, and
Great book.
Yes, it is. And in one section of it, he talks about when he was in college, and how all these guys started playing hearts and not going to class. Well, I had a very similar experience, as a matter of fact. And if you would like to hear about that, it's right there.
Well, we are now properly teased. So
yes.
Check out Holler Troll. Well, we've got a lot to talk about. There's a lot of stuff that have gone past since we last talked. Since we last talked, there's this big scandal now down in Georgia.
Yeah.
Allegedly, District Attorney Fani Willis had some extramarital affair with a gentleman by the name of Nate Wade. Is it Nathan Wade? Okay.
Nathan Wade.
He's the special counsel that she hired, and allegedly they had some affair, and they're trying to make a big thing out of it. And I never understood why it's a big thing. But I found out some other information that I put out on TikTok today. When I first heard it, I thought, this is terribly convenient that we would be getting close to this court case, and that all of a sudden this would crop up. What are the odds? I mean, is Fani Willis that sloppy? I don't think so. But some of the information we haven't heard, I heard earlier today or yesterday from a source online who's a great source, Midas Touch. I'm not big on watching them because I don't like how they present it, but they have great information. And they brought up something about this case, which I find interesting and makes it a little, you want to question it. Now, this divorce case has been going on for about 2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
This claim was brought up by the lawyer of a guy by the name of Roman, who was one of Donald Trump's co-defendants. He brought up this thing about this extramarital affair between Wade and Fani Willis. And just to gum up the gears or whatever. And they claim they got it information from the divorce. Unfortunately, all the documents in the divorce are sealed. So how
Yeah.
do you get information from a divorce where all the documents are sealed? Well, that could only mean that Nathan Wade's wife is talking and
Yeah.
her lawyer is talking. And so the interesting thing about this, if you dig into it, you find out the precipitous of this particular divorce that started 2 years ago is that Nathan Wade's wife cheated on him with his friend.
Mhm.
So sometime back, they've already established why there's a divorce and what the premise for the divorce is. So now to bring in Fonnie Willis and Nathan Wade, I mean, if they've been in this 2 years, it isn't crazy to think that Nathan Wade might be dating and even dating Fonnie Willis. It really has nothing to do with the case. But here's what I think is going to be problematic for Mr. Roman, his lawyer, Nathan Wade's wife, and her lawyer. This sounds an awful lot like the ridiculous bullshit that Republicans throw in the mix just to create some noise in the narrative. You know,
Yeah.
we've had all the hearings, we've had, you know, the Hunter Bidens and stuff. They keep ranting and raving about all this horrible shit, but they have no evidence. And there's been no evidence shown in this particular situation with Fonnie Willis. Being this close to the election, being this close to the court case with Fonnie Willis, it isn't crazy to think that some Republicans came in and said, hey, we'll give you a little money, we'll give you a little support, we'll give you a little consideration somehow if you hype this shit up. And they'll say, well, it's not true. Well, it doesn't matter if it's true. We just want to make noise. But the problem with that is when Republicans do this, they always leave wreckage behind, you know?
Yeah.
So if Mr. Roman and his lawyer and Nathan Wade's wife and her lawyer are stirring this shit up and we find out there's nothing there, last person I want to fuck with is Fonnie Willis because that sounds like obstruction of
Oh,
justice.
yeah.
And don't
Absolutely.
think she's not going to indict some motherfuckers in that case. So I don't know exactly what's happening, but it sounds terribly fishy. Fonnie Willis and Roman's team are going to meet at some point in February to present this. And I wouldn't be surprised if Roman and his lawyer decide to slowly but surely back out of this because they're going to need evidence and they have none.
That's right. And as we know from the Hunter Biden case and others, evidence is actually the enemy of what they want to do. They want allegation. They want to be able to make outlandish claims, and they don't need evidence. They're right now they have an inquiry to impeach President Biden with no evidence of any wrongdoing whatsoever. And we know they're simply doing it to try to put a blemish on Biden in the same way that everything they do is to put a blemish on Biden. Why they have the best deal they could ever possibly get on the border in hand, and the House is talking about rejecting it simply because Donald Trump has called up Mike Johnson and said, no, 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 you can't fix the border or I'm fucked. You know, I mean, this is what's going on. Anytime a Republican is involved, all they want is the allegation. They don't want the evidence. They don't even care if there is a resolution to it. They want an ongoing thing where they can, where Fox News can riff on it and OAN and all the others. And before you know it, you've got somebody convicted of something when there's no evidence for it.
Well, the perfect example of that is when Donald Trump, back when the 2020 election ended, and he went to the DOJ and said, there's a lot of election fraud in there. Please do something about it. And they say there is no election fraud. And then he said to them, well, just say there is, and we'll take it from there. I mean, they're not worried about the judicial courts. They're worried about the court of public opinion.
Exactly.
But I'll tell you this, they're kind of, that strategy is kind of antiquated as far as I'm concerned. Back in the 70s and 80s, when some scandalous thing would come out, like about Gary Hart or somebody else, and it would destroy a career or destroy a politician's, there's been so much bullshit out about Donald Trump. Everybody's desensitized. And if you tell somebody, well, Fonnie Willis had an affair with a special counsel. Nobody fucking cares. There's been so
Well,
much
that's
horrific shit that this whole strategy is antiquated. It doesn't work anymore.
Well, that's the thing, and I mean, Al Franken shouldn't have backed down. And
No,
Fawny, stick to your guns. Say, because really, when you get right down to it, I don't care if she has 10 affairs. You
no,
know what? Does that affect her job performance? That's all I care about. With Trump, we know he had an affair with a porn star, and that's one thing. I mean, if morally that may be abhorrent, but it's not a disqualifier unless you try to hush it up with hush money. Then it becomes a criminal enterprise, which is why they're going after him, not because he had an affair with a porn star, but because he paid money to hush it up and then claimed that it was legal fees of some sort or other, rent or whatever he had to say it was. So criminality and morality are two different things.
absolutely. And the Republicans at this point can't win on the legal issues, can't win on the facts. So they have to try to create some morass or some kind of scandal in order to taint Joe Biden or Fani Willis or whoever it is. And they've been doing this a long time. They tried to do it to Hillary Clinton in 2016. They
Yeah.
tried to do it to Joe Biden in 2020, and now they're trying to do it to Joe Biden in 2024. And none of it has ever worked. Nothing has ever come from any of their claims. There's never been any evidence, and it's all been a waste of time and tax money. And they have the audacity to suggest that Democrats waste money.
Yeah, and Republicans are incredibly gullible people. I mean, here it's like a cat is distracted when you dangle a shiny object in front of them, and if they wore pants that had wallets, they wouldn't notice you were picking their pocket while
Right,
they were
right.
dangling the shiny um, whatever it might be, keys or bell or whatever. But that's beside the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they are so gullible. I just saw a woman this morning complaining about how Biden, traffics children.
Yeah.
And how all Democrats are pedophiles when every time you catch a pedophile, he's a Republican, usually working for the Republican Party and as some sort of official. Either that or he's a preacher, one of the two.
Yeah, no shit. No shit. It's truly amazing that they try the tactics, they continue to fail, but they keep doing it. It's like they're pounding their
Yeah,
heads against the wall. They continue to fail, but they keep trying to do it. And the sad thing is, there's a certain faction of people that every time they do it, even after failing multiple times, they still buy into it. I listen to
yeah,
Trump will fucks now, and they say some of the most ridiculous things. I mean, even if you didn't know any of the facts, common sense would tell you it's stupid.
yeah. Well, this is it. I mean, look at Q. Look at how many of them bought into the whole Q thing, and still do.
Yeah.
I know. I still am aware of people who still believe that Q was number one, was Donald Trump, and he was sending them these secret messages via computer that they had to decode and so forth, and that Joe Biden is either dead and being impersonated by James Woods, or he's imprisoned in Guantanamo along with Hillary Clinton and all the other major Democratic figures.
That's what I don't understand. You see people like James Woods, Mario Lopez, even after all this time, you would presume that they are intelligent folks. In fact, James Woods, I think, has a high IQ,
Yeah,
as I've read about him. But they sidle up to Donald Trump and they buy into Donald Trump, and they're dumb enough to speak out about it. I don't know how they don't understand that this is pretty much ruining their career. Donald Trump is without question going down, and when he does, these people are going to be standing there, as I often say, holding their least impressive appendage with their mouth agape. And that's what's
yeah.
going to happen. They're going to go, what the fuck happened? And all of us knew, but somehow these seemingly intelligent folks had no clue.
Well, apparently, I saw a thing a while back that James Woods was, quote, thinking about suing, some of the media people for canceling his career. And all I have to say is, hey, that's on you, buddy. You talk shit. People don't want to work with you. If they think you're a moron, they don't want to work with you. I mean, that just means you're going to. I wouldn't want to be on a movie set with James Woods, him spouting that crap. I'd probably punch him in the head at some point, just out of irritation. No, I don't want to be around people like that. I separate myself from them on purpose. And most people, most creative people, don't want that either.
No, no, and it's funny to me how the Republicans will use these tactics to try to smear somebody, fake shit, and they'll try to smear somebody, ultimately trying to cancel somebody. Yet they'll be the first ones to scream about cancel culture and that we have to do something about it, as if there's some cancel culture council that you go to and complain to or take them out of office. The fact is, cancel culture is simply the same thing that they're doing. It's the court of public opinion. You can complain about cancel culture all you want, but there's one way to avoid being canceled. If you do fucked up shit, you're going to get canceled. If you don't want to be canceled, don't do fucked up shit. It's pretty simple. It's on you. There is no group that you're going to complain to and complain about cancel culture. It's the human perception of what's going on. They either like it and they don't like it, and there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah, I got to share one with folks of a guy who got his comeuppance. There's this pastor down here, and I use the word because that's what he calls himself. I don't consider him that, but he has a quote church down near Nashville, and what it is a giant tent with a metal frame. And one of his latest sermons was he was saying any Democrat in his congregation needed to get out because you couldn't go to heaven, you couldn't be a Christian if you were a Democrat, and he was railing on that. And he's one of these guys who's always saying, God sends tornadoes because of gay people, that kind of crap, right? Well, apparently God wasn't too happy with him because he just crushed his church with snow.
Now you're talking about Greg Locke.
That's right.
And Greg Locke is well known on TikTok. They had his videos running for a long time, and he's a special piece of shit. I mean, this guy is one of the worst when it comes. I mean, this guy is trying to be outrageous just to generate more money. And I don't know that he has, but I know he got smart and they took away his tax exempt situation. And he says, I wanted to do that. I did that. Yeah, you fucking did it already. All right. You had it over the money and willingly. Yeah, I think we're going to see more of that. Some of these people getting their comeuppance, they've been too brash, too long, and lying too much. And eventually the chickens come home to roost.
Well, those of us who remember the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome in Minnesota know what snow can do to a dome, right?
Yeah.
Well, it works the same way with tents, even big ones, and that is really funny. I mean, this is the same guy a couple of weeks ago who was saying churches should remove all the handicap spaces outside because that just shows they weren't healing people. This kind of crap. I mean, this guy really deserved the comeuppance, and a tornado would have been better for sure. And perhaps, well, I won't say that, but anyway, the snow is good. It's just shown that Mother Nature does what it does. There is no hand of God that directs this kind of thing. Sometimes it's just snow.
Yeah, I last year I have a small boat and I have a slip, and on the slip is a canvas top. It'd been there for years. Got too much snow, crushed it, tore this. I had to pay about $4,000 to get it repaired, but it wasn't God trying to tell me something. It was fucking snow, and
God hates boats.
God hates boats, and he hates liberals.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
Liberals with boats.
Liberals with boats. That is the fucking worst.
Yeah.
But we got some important stories to talk about. One stupid story. You no doubt saw this picture of Donald Trump when he's ranting and raving, holding his hand up and showing red marks on his fingers and in his palm a little bit, and people wondering what it is, making jokes. I know James Carville swears it's syphilis. And I would love if that's the case.
Me too.
It would explain why Donald Trump's slipping a bit mentally. It would be, you know, what would be ironic about it is if he did have syphilis and his mind went, that's the exact same thing that happened to Al Capone.
Yeah,
So
that's
it seems
perfect.
reasonable. It seems
Yeah.
perfect.
Also explains why you don't see Melania around a lot.
Well, yeah, and, you know, and the other thing is, it could be that Donald Trump is at some point, and I read a headline that says he did, and I didn't read this story, so I don't know if it's true, but I can't wait till Donald Trump starts suggesting it's stigmata, you know, that he's,
Yeah,
but somebody's got to tell Don it was the wrist, not the
yeah,
fingers.
yeah, yeah. What a schmo, you know. Oh my goodness. Um, yeah, there's a lot of important stuff going on, both in the Supreme Court, in excuse me, the House of Representatives, of course, in the courts with Trump. There's a lot of shit going on.
Well, you know, of course, we were hanging by a thread, wondering if the government was going to shut down. It was supposed to be today, and I had people concerned, saying, "Oh, are they going to shut it down? Are they going to shut it down?" Because some people's jobs depend on the money that would come from that that would be stopped. And I get it. I understand the fear, and I always told them, I said, "There's no way the government's going to get shut down." Because the Republicans are the ones that can put the fly in the ointment, and they have way too much to lose. They may act tough and say, "We're going to shut it down," but they'll never do it because it's going to hurt them more than it's going to hurt the Democrats. And
Yeah.
of course, Mike Johnson caved in to the Democrats again. And we've got another reprieve till March, another continuing resolution. They still can't come together and get the deal done. But I would think Mike Johnson's at risk of going the way of Kevin McCarthy.
Well, I think you're probably right. Now, there's one thing that may save him, and I've seen a number of what I would call, there are a few left, more mainstream Republicans, traditional Republicans in the House saying this shit's got to stop. One of them, and I can't remember his name right now, is saying they should actually sanction all the members of the MAGA Republicans and take them off committees and so forth because they're just there as agents of chaos. They're not trying to do government. And I hope that catches on. They might go for Mike Johnson, but then what happens?
Yeah.
Are any of the Republicans going to support? I mean, it took them forever to get Mike Johnson. They're not going to go with Jim Jordan. They're not going to go with Steve Scalise. They're not going to go with any of these
The MAGA fucks. Anybody that's
yeah.
tied to MAGA, the normal people are not going to vote for. The only reason they voted for Mike Johnson is because he was a relative unknown and flew under the radar, and they figure, well, they'll just sneak him in. And then they find out he's this religious zealot who's got some dark secrets. So now I would think a lot of the normal people want this fucker out now too.
Oh, by the way, Mike Johnson. Okay, you know he has been for years principal attorney for the guy who has the Ark up in Kentucky.
The Ark of Kentucky.
With the replica, Noah's Ark.
Okay.
Okay. And yeah, it got hit by flooding and damaged. And the insurance company doesn't want to pay because it's a quote act of God. And Mike is suing the insurance company, but I think he'll probably lose.
The question is how do you make a replica of something you've never seen? I mean, just out of the facts and figures from the Bible?
Yeah, the cubits and so forth, you know, but that's what they've done, and they get all these people. It's actually on a list of the very worst attractions because there's nothing to it. You know, it's just, but it sucks money out of the county where it is. It was supposed to be this big, gigantic attraction, and all the faithful would come to, but it's just boring, and nobody wants to go there.
Wow. And well, at least Mike's got a gig after he gets kicked out of the speakership. At least he's got going something there. Now, you were talking about the Supreme Court, and Donald Trump is kind of throwing some pressure onto the Supreme Court. We're waiting for the appellate court to come out and decide whether or not he has absolute immunity. And I think,
Yeah, that's going to happen.
yeah, in the court case, the way the judges were questioning Donald Trump's team, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. They're going to say, no, you don't have immunity. It's a ridiculous and frivolous thing. And then, of course, it will go to the Supreme Court. And Donald Trump comes out and writing in all caps because he means that shit. And basically says, nothing's wrong. I was perfectly right in doing it. I hope they do the right thing. And God bless you, Supreme Court. He's really putting all his eggs in one basket in the Supreme Court, thinking that they're going to side with him on this immunity thing.
I don't like to make predictions. My prediction is that the appeals court is going to turn it down, and the Supreme Court will say, "Nah, we're gonna hear that. No, that's not something we need to even take a look at."
I agree. I think that's what's going to happen because it is so ridiculous and so frivolous. They're going to say, well, the appeals court got it right. There's no reason for us to look at it. And that's going to be an interesting moment in time for Donald Trump because he's all about, kicking the can down the street, and he's got no place to kick it anymore. He's gone to the limit, and now he's stuck with that judgment. I mean, other courts have said you don't have immunity, but now he's gone through this process when the Supreme Court says no, or we're not going to hear it. There's really no place to go. And his big problem is this immunity thing is the basis for pretty much all of his defenses and all of his trials.
Exactly.
So that's going to be taken away.
I think he may have kicked himself in the butt too, or shot himself in the foot, however you want to look at it. With he's right straight up front offering Aileen Cannon a Supreme Court seat. He has said, if I am reelected and I get the opportunity, I will appoint Aileen Cannon to the Supreme Court. That's a straight up bribe to a judge that's hearing his case. I would think, if I were Jack Smith and others, I would say this is grounds for removing her because she's being bribed by Donald Trump.
Wouldn't that be ironic if she was ultimately removed because of the actions of Donald Trump? That would be fucking. Well, I mean, we know that Aileen Cannon right now is doing everything she can to slow walk this court case and probably push it beyond the 2024 election. And a lot of people are upset about it. I personally think that Jack Smith knows exactly what he's doing. He's trying to set it up so there's no way to back down from it. He wants her in the right place when he does ultimately ask that she be recused. She has to do some egregious stuff and maybe a list of egregious things. And I think he's making his notes and making his plans and biding his time, and he will go after Aileen Cannon at some point.
We should also mention there's something coming up at the Supreme Court that is, I won't say it's dire, but it's going to be in the same ballpark as gutting the Voting Rights Act and turning Roe versus Wade back to the states. It's called the Chevron Doctrine, and what it basically, what it traditionally has been, is that it was decided some time ago that federal agencies were the best because they had access to experts and research and so forth, that they were better than the courts as an arbiter for, like, how things that oil companies can do, or any business or so forth that comes within the scope of a federal agency, that the agency should have primacy in deciding whatever the dispute might be.
Right.
Most people are expecting the court to reverse that, and that can have far-reaching. It would make a great deal of difference.
Well, and the other thing, it turns every dispute like that into a a lengthy court case with appeals and
Exactly.
appeals. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of time. And if you have an urgent situation, it's not going to be handled urgently or efficiently even because of now it's become a bigger process. It's ironic that Republicans want smaller government, but everything they do makes it more protracted.
Right, and we already see, and this is why things like the Powell memorandum and so forth, the investment in the right wing has had such far-reaching. Well, that's why we've got the court we have, is because of the money behind these people, and now it was spread out among Republicans and so forth to get these people on the court.
Right.
But yeah, it basically comes down to that. Corporations have a lot more money than the federal government, I'll have to say it, in most cases probably better lawyers, because and more of them, because they have the money to
Right.
hire them. I mean, when you could graduate from Harvard and you have a choice of going to work for a federal agency or going to a Wall Street firm where they're going to start you at several $100,000 a year versus, you know, 100 or less for maybe for an agency, where you're going to go.
Yeah.
You know, they're sucking up, you know, some of the best, not all, but some. So it's rare that you have a number of lawyers. Okay, you've got 2 or 3 government lawyers working on a case, and you've got 40 or 50 prominent lawyers from the oil industry or whatever opposing them, and it's and maybe a judgeship that you bought to
Yeah.
go along with it. This is why money in politics makes a huge difference, and why letting it in was the worst thing that ever happened, and why it must be taken out again.
Absolutely. Well, you know, something like this case, it's not as sexy as Donald Trump's immunity or taking him off the ballot or anything like that. So a lot of people will let that slide by, and it will have far-reaching effects on this country, but they won't be instantaneous. It'll kind of degrade over time and it'll get worse and worse, and it'll be bad for the country. And I think the Republicans and the Supreme Court at this point think this is a perfect time. There's so much other bullshit going on, sexier, more salacious shit. We'll just slip that in there, like some of the other stuff they've slipped in there, and they will be able to progress to their goal of trying to take down this country by getting rid of regulations and doing all that shit. I think not a lot of people are paying attention to it, enough attention to it, but it is potentially disastrous for this country.
I will sound a note of hope, though, because um, what this court is doing is they're getting rid of the idea of precedent, that if cases are decided and they're enforced for a long time, they don't get revisited.
Right.
I mean, this is why Roe versus Wade was such an aberration, because, and why they were, each of the conservative justices were asked about it and lied during the confirmation process. They all said it's settled, you know, no, we're not going to touch that. And then, of course, immediately did, because they lied. And these are not great jurists, they're just political hacks
Yeah.
masquerading as judges. But if they can do it, so can we. In the sense that once, and I really feel like somebody's going to take Joe Biden aside and say, Joe, be better now, but if you're reelected, you have got to expand the court. We have got to take back the court, because right now, you know, we have the Senate, they have the House, we have the presidency. But if they get them all again, we're doomed.
Yeah.
We are going to be some sort of we're North Korea, we're Turkey, we're you know, these strongman led, we're China, you know, for that matter. You know,
Well,
I mean, that's what's going to happen.
now, Ed, you're a logical thinker. You're a smart man. I get a lot of people coming to me. What if Donald Trump wins? What if the Republicans win the House or the Senate or both of them and they get power again? Looking at 2024, 10 months away or so, um, do you see any path of a Republican winning the presidency or even the Senate or the House? Do you see any path? I don't. I mean, there's just too much working against them.
I think they will lose the House. I think we will retain the Senate and the presidency,
I do too.
and that gives us the time we need. Joe will have. I mean, if we have the Senate and the House, if we can, sideline Manchin and Sinema, who and have a majority in the Senate of that we can get things routinely passed, and in the House, then we're golden. But the court is still a problem because of the way it has stacked up, and quite frankly, there's no one vulnerable right now. I don't see. I don't know how they got rid of Anthony Kennedy. He didn't seem to be sick or anything. I know his son had something to do with Deutsche Bank, and I'm wondering if he wasn't blackmailed out or something.
Probably.
So to help them get that majority, of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, and it's a shame that she didn't resign before she died.
Yeah.
But it was the perfect storm that allowed them to finally get that majority, which has to be broken up.
It does.
It's perfect when you have a Supreme Court that's even and one swing vote.
Right.
That can work.
I dare say we should have a different rule in the Supreme Court that under all circumstances, there are equal number of conservatives and Republicans and independent. That way that's an even vote all the time, and you'll get more compromise and more negotiation. The fact that you get more conservative judges or more liberal judges on the court and you win the lottery for the next 20 years, that's a bullshit way to run the country.
Exactly. Yeah, it has been the goal of the Republicans since, I'm going to say 1950 or whatever. Once it became clear that FDR was dead and was not going to be reelected, that they began their fight to claw back and get rid of everything that was passed during Roosevelt's four administrations. That really the third one was more Truman than, the fourth one was more Truman than Roosevelt, but still, he held things in there. That was the heyday of America. That was when America was at its best to a point for white people.
Right.
Then we started to try to level the playing field somewhat up through the 60s. But then, by the time we hit 81, that's where the turnaround began in earnest. But Republicans have been trying to turn us back to 1900 ever since the Depression. They were against everything. They were against Social Security. Everything that brought the country back, they were against. Because they want us all to be slaves except for the oligarchs. That's the way it was. People have forgotten that, but that's what it was. Most Americans didn't make very much money. They worked long hours, and they didn't do very well. I'm sorry. It was like what we consider a third world country. America was not great then. The best time for most white Americans was during the 1950s into the first part of the 60s, because that's when labor unions were ascendant, and everything American industry was humming. It wasn't being outsourced to other countries, but there was so much that happened, especially in the 70s and 80s, that destroyed America, destroyed the middle class for sure. Absolutely. And they've been trying to get us back to 1900. Essentially since Reagan was elected. That's been the primary, and they've been largely successful.
Absolutely. I tell you what, Ed, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We're back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Ed is back after a long, what would I call it? A long
sabbatical.
Sabbatical. There you go. Eddie was on a sabbatical.
Yes. Mhm.
And he can't talk about it because it's all a secret. It was a
That's right.
secret mission.
That's right.
I got to tell you,
I mean, when the president calls, what are you going to do?
yeah, what are you going to do? I told this on the podcast yesterday. I said, my wife informed me about a new trip that we're going to go on in February. I go, cool. We're going to go to Georgia. What we're going to do? She says, I haven't been there since I was very young and I want to go back. I go, great. Where? She goes, South Padre Island. I go, wait a minute. That's Texas. And she says, yeah. And I go, I don't know that I have a lot of fans. And well, I maybe have some fans in Texas, but I'm going to seem hypocritical going down there after all the shit I talked about Texas. And she looked at me and she goes, we're going to Texas. I go, cool. Because that's what you do when you've been married 40 years and plan to be married for a couple more. You just do what the fuck you're told. But I was thinking
You go
about
on
that.
spring break.
No, I'm going before spring break.
Oh, okay.
But what I was thinking is it's right down by the border. I can go
Yeah.
with my little phone and do TikToks on the border looking for that
Ooh,
crisis going on.
yeah.
Because I'm hearing that they're taking photos down at the border and it's not nearly as bad as the Republicans are making it out in some places because Joe is
Yeah.
actually doing some things.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll be interested to see that. What I wanted to start talking about, because we haven't talked about it since last time you're here, because it hadn't happened. We had the Iowa caucus,
Yep.
and Donald Trump won that easily, and Ron DeSantis was third and a close or second, and close third was Nikki Haley. Now, coming up next week, we've got New Hampshire, which is a decidedly different thing. Donald Trump is leading. Nikki Haley is nipping at his heels, back about 11, 12 points. And Ron DeSantis is at like 8 points. That's
Yeah.
all
He's
he's
going.
polling at.
I'm not even going there. I'm going to South Carolina where they love me. Yeah, right.
What do you think? What do you think? I personally think that after New Hampshire, he may just drop out. Because
I
I
think
mean,
you're right. I mean, the people who are giving him money are not. They're going to say, "I'm not throwing bad money after good." Nope,
right.
nope. And that'll be it. I mean, it's like Ramaswamy. He could have kept going with his own money, I guess. But now he's. I won't say what he's doing for Trump, but that's what he's angling for, some sort of appointment to Trump's next administration. Um, that's something we could go ahead.
Well, we won't say what Ramaswamy's doing for Donald Trump. Let's just say it involves some bodily excretions and may
Yeah.
have some explanation for the sores on Donald Trump's hat. I'm just saying, just something to think about.
Yeah, we're not saying that's the case. It's just, but when you hear these rumors over and over again,
Well, if they can
never
talk
mind.
shit, we can talk shit. Now,
That's right.
The funniest thing that Nikki Haley said some two fucked up stupid things. First of all, after she came in third in Iowa, she says, "Well, looks like a two-person race between me and Donnie Trump." I don't know
Yeah,
how she got that after
yeah,
just getting beat substantially by Donald Trump, and she was a little behind Ron DeSantis. But did you hear her quote? And then I heard her try to explain it away.
yeah,
But her quote was, "The United States is not now and never has been a racist country."
yeah. Hmm. And then I
Motherfucker,
saw
please.
somebody went through and took all of her quotes over the years that say exactly the opposite and put them in back to back to back to back. And they go on for like a minute where she's basically saying this is a racist country and this is what they did to me.
Right.
So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know why Republicans think that they can say any damn thing they want to and people will expect it. Will say it's true. I mean, America is a racist country. It's always been a racist country. And we have some individuals who aren't racist. But by and large, we're a racist country. It's that simple.
It is. It's been racist since the day I was born, and it's racist to this point, probably at a more fever pitch than I've ever. Well, yeah, it's worse than I've ever seen it. It was covered up with people under their rocks for a long time, but it was always there, and now it's become apparent. The ironic thing about Nikki Haley is she said this country wasn't racist, and then she went on to explain how she struggled with racism. being a
Yes.
woman of Indian descent. But then she went on another show, and I think Jake Tapper and they were, what the fuck are you saying? It's not racist. And now she's trying to dig herself out. You know how she did it? She said, well, you got to understand, in the Constitution, it said all men are created equal. This country wasn't based on racism. And Jake says it was built on racism. Take slavery,
Yeah.
for example. Yeah, but in the Constitution, the intention wasn't for it to be racist. Well, Nikki, that wasn't the question. If the intention when we started out wasn't racist, fine. The question was, is this country racist? And whether the intention was there or not in the Constitution, the fact is it is racist. You opened your mouth, you weren't thinking when you spoke, and now you look stupid, but you're right in line with every other fucking Republican.
As long as we're talking Iowa, let's address those numbers.
Yeah.
This is the fact. Donald Trump got 51% of the votes of the 15% who showed up to caucus, which
Right.
means he got 7.5% of the available Republican votes in Iowa. That's hardly impressive.
No, it is hardly impressive. And people will say, well, it was cold and snowy. And I explained to folks, we live in Minnesota and Iowa. Cold and snowy is just another fucking Monday in this part of the
Yeah.
country in January. So to suggest that Iowans stayed home because it was too cold, it's bullshit. They're used to this stuff.
Yeah, most of them have to go to work. They have to go to school. They don't close shit when it snows.
No.
You know, that slows things down a little bit, maybe for a few hours, but no.
No, it
Yeah,
doesn't.
the people who were motivated made it there, and the people who didn't give a shit didn't. And let me say one more thing about Iowa while I'm at it. My first
Sure.
radio job was in Waterloo, Iowa. And not only that, I was there for about 3 months. The station went underground. I mean, went into the ground. It was bought by a church, and I was hired at the program as the program director for a what would now be considered an evangelical church. They were as crooked as Jim and Tammy, and I got out as quick as I could. And at that point, I resolved never even to fly over Iowa if I could avoid it. There are 15 states right now who have declined to accept federal money, part of the EBT program, that would give money to so students don't go hungry in the summertime because they don't get fed like they do at school. It would add $40 per child to the EBT accounts of eligible people. 15 right. States have refused to do it. One of them is Iowa, and the others are the usual suspects, except I think for Vermont surprised me. But the others are the Mississippi's, Alabamas, and so forth. And the governor of Iowa, a woman, I forget her name right now because I don't
Reynolds.
keep up with it. Kim, yeah. She said she was turning it down because we have an epidemic of childhood obesity, and I don't want to exacerbate that problem.
Yeah.
That's what's going on in Iowa, folks. Do I give a shit who they want to be president? No, I do not. I just assume they weren't even in the country. They Texas and Florida can just leave anytime they want to.
Well, they always talk about the Iowa caucus is so important, but I did some digging and I found out the last time a person voted who got the most votes in Iowa, a Republican, last time that person actually became president was George W. Bush 24 years ago. So the track record's not too good. For the Democrats, it was Obama in 2008. So they haven't hit on shit in the last 20 years. They got nothing, and they aren't important. And now they're going to New Hampshire, which really doesn't have a great impact. The other thing about Iowa, they only have 6 fucking electoral votes, so big deal, whoever they fucking vote for. And New Hampshire is not too far off of that. It's more of a liberal state. They're more independent voters. And the biggest problem Republicans can have coming into election is poor turnout. We know that when there's a great turnout, it benefits the Democrats. And I would suggest that there's going to be a poor turnout. And if that's the case, the Republicans are in some deep shit. It'll be interesting to see how many people turn out in New Hampshire when it's not cold.
Yeah, for sure. But you know, I just want people to put in context that 51% win in Iowa was nothing. It was 7.5% of available Republican votes.
Right.
The people that would be expected to vote for him, only 7.5% did. Other good news, I saw that both Ipsos and YouGov have new polls out showing Biden uh, beating Trump. Oh, that was my air cleaner. That's what's been making that noise.
Yeah, Ed wasn't having a moment there. He heard something and was trying to check into it because when you're old, you don't know what the fuck's creeping up on you.
That's right. But
Well,
anyway,
don't you think, we've been hearing for the last year about how the polls and Donald Trump's going to win and all this stuff, and I think it's all bullshit. Don't you think we're going to see a shift now as we get closer to the election that more and more polls are going to come out if they're legitimate? I don't know if there are any legitimate polls, but the legitimate polls will come out and it'll slowly point in the favor of Joe Biden just by virtue of all the ridiculousness with surrounding Donald Trump.
yeah, they actually did a head to head on Biden and Trump, and then they threw in Kennedy in the mix, and Biden still wins both times.
Yeah, I think Kennedy's more of a problem for Republicans than he is
Yeah,
Democrats.
I really think so because you got all that Q stuff involving the Kennedys. I think that would take them if they actually vote. You know, but I don't know. I mostly they're running around looking for Kennedy.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, no shit. And waiting for his cousin to come back to Dealey
yeah,
Plaza to be VP with
exactly.
Donald Trump. Yeah, that's fucking
Hmm.
crazy. But in New Hampshire now, they say Nikki Haley is close to Donald Trump, or at least closer than anybody has been up to this point. How important do you think the New Hampshire thing is? Does Nikki Haley stick in it if she wins second? Because I
Well,
think DeSantis is done.
seeing as how South Carolina is her home state, I think she'd stick in at least through then.
Yeah,
Because if she doesn't totally win, as long as she's close in New Hampshire, and then she stands a chance of winning South Carolina. I don't know if she does, but you know, Al Gore lost Tennessee, so I don't know if she has a chance of winning down there. But you know, sometimes that home state sentiment does win out. So I guess we'll see. I would expect her to stay in through South Carolina, but let's face it, Trump's going to be the nominee here in before spring, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, no
If he's
question
not,
about it.
if he doesn't keel over from syphilis or whatever, he's gonna
Dementia.
dementia, which is looking better too all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw one of him the other day. I mean, he can't put two sentences together, and then he's trying to mock Biden.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
it's ironic. It's ironic that he would try to do that. Now, in terms of South Carolina, the things I've heard is that people are suggesting that Donald Trump should beat Nikki Haley in South Carolina. I mean, Nikki Haley was the governor. I don't know that she left on great terms. I don't know the whole story, but some people think that Donald Trump will win in South Carolina.
It's possible, and that's what I'm saying. If she can't carry her home state, then it's all over with. I mean, if she came in big in New Hampshire, she might try to weather that, but I don't see it happening. Um, are Republicans going to vote for a woman? I don't know. I don't know if they
A,
ever will.
a woman of something other than white ethnicity? No, they're not going to fucking
No,
vote for her. No way.
no,
She's not a
no.
viable nominee. So the question is say after South Carolina, Donald Trump is crowned the nominee. Now I've said this all along, and I may be wrong. And actually I kind of hope I'm wrong because I think it would be beneficial to the Democrats. With all that's going on and all that's going wrong for Donald Trump, I don't know how a 78-year-old man in not the best mental or physical health survives the next 10 months with all he's going through.
Yeah.
Court date after court date after court date, the prospect of going to jail. We've got the New York court's going to take away all his money and property. That's a lot to heap on a normal, healthy human being of 40. You do that to Donald Trump, and I just don't see him making it to the nomination.
Yeah, I am counting on him not making it to the election. Because I don't trust my countrymen anymore, and I think there's a lot of us in that boat who were surprised to see how many votes Donald Trump was able to come up with in the last. Number one, that he was able to get elected. Number
Yeah.
one, that he was able to get a nomination to get elected over Hillary Clinton, and then to command that many votes in the last. Biden won. There's no doubt about it. Trump lost. No doubt about it. But he had far too many votes. Far too many.
It's
It's
troubling.
just insane. It's troubling that 70% of Republicans or more still A, think that he's a viable candidate, and B, that the election was stolen.
Well, let's look at the scenario then. They go to New Hampshire. Ron DeSantis doesn't do shit. He drops out.
Which he won't. Yeah.
You don't think he'll drop out?
No, I don't think he'll do anything. I
Oh,
think
okay.
he'll do worse than he did in Iowa for sure.
Oh, no question. No question. He's already showing badly in fucking New Hampshire. So say he drops out. They go to South Carolina. Nikki gets her ass whipped by Donald in South Carolina. We're still early on in the primaries. So they give Donald Trump the nomination. I don't even know. Do you still do the primaries if there's nobody going against him? Do they just
I would
cancel the
assume
fuckers?
not.
I would
I would
assume not.
assume they do.
But if Donald Trump is already crowned the nominee this early on, but we question whether or not he ends up being the nominee because of not unforeseen, but outside situations that might take him out of the equation. Then what does the fucking Republicans do? Do they go back to Nikki Haley? Do they go back to Ron DeSantis? I mean, Chris Christie got out of the race, but I said to Old Soul on the show, I said, it's interesting how he worded it. He said, I'm suspending my candidacy.
Yeah.
I mean, is it conceivable that somebody comes out of the woodwork if Donald Trump is out of the mix and everybody's jumping back in to try to get that nomination? I mean, knowing Republicans, that seems like what would happen.
Oh, absolutely. I would predict that everybody from Ted Cruz on up, because that's the bottom, would probably jump in there if there's no Trump. And I really think you'd see guys like Sununu rising to the top. It won't be Pence because they're pissed at him.
Yeah.
And I mean, remember Ted Cruz won Iowa the last time over Trump, so he has some conservative cred, so to speak, but he's also a lot of, he keeps trying to joke about Cancun, for God's sake, and people keep going, Ted, what the fuck is the matter with you?
Yeah, you should just shut up about that.
Yeah. But so there's, I'm trying to think, national prominence. Sununu's about it that's electable. I don't think either DeSantis or Nikki Haley has ever been elected.
No. Although, Mitt Romney could come out of the scorched earth. I doubt he will.
He's hated as much as Pence is, let's face it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I just think there's going to be a lot of scrambling by the Republicans as we get closer to November. And that's good news for the the Democrats, because I don't think Donald Trump would be the least likely to make a good showing in the 2024 election. But I don't think any Republican could beat Joe Biden or any other Democrat at this point.
No, it would have to. I can't come up with anybody that I think at this point. I mean, Sununu, I think, is hovering. He was smart enough not to get into it this time because he knows his time is coming.
Right.
Or he thinks it is. See, what a lot of people don't realize is that once Trump is elected, should he be, he ain't leaving. He'll come up and say, well, I was cheated out of a second term, so I'm taking it now, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to revisit this whole thing of limiting the amount of times. He would go for that. I'm not sure how they got him out last time, to be honest with you. I think at one point, I'm sure he was thinking about just nailing the door shut and sitting there.
Well, we know that what's his name's Meadows is chief of staff. What's his name? Scarpino or something like that.
Yeah.
He said as much to what's her name? I can't. I want to say Haley. It's not Haley.
I know who you mean. The brunette young lady who,
right. The hero.
Yeah, it'll come to me.
Cassidy Hutchinson.
That's her.
He said to her, he said, "We're just not leaving." That's what Donald Trump says. We're just not leaving. And it's funny. People joked about that after he lost the election. What if he just doesn't leave? And of course, Donald Trump considered that fact, and it wasn't going to happen, obviously, and he ended up leaving. The prospect of Donald Trump winning the 2024 election is so outrageous to me. I can't even give it serious consideration. But should he get close? That's, people always talk about the Civil War and the Republicans rising up. I don't see them rising up. They don't have the courage. No. They don't have the organization. They don't have anything. All this fear of violence if Donald Trump gets convicted or doesn't win. I'm not worried about that. What I am worried about when it comes to violence, and I'd be worried if I was Donald Trump and any other MAGA fuck, if Donald Trump looks like he's going to win the election, that's when we could see some violence from the other side. And now Democrats aren't known for their violence or a radical behavior, but you have to understand that people, and I get it when I do my TikToks, people are fucking terrified of the idea of Donald Trump being president again. They're terrified of losing their country. And when people get terrified, they do irrational things. And that's my biggest fear. If Donald Trump looks like he has any chance at all, some real crazy shit could happen.
Speaking of real crazy shit, have you seen the video of Roger Stone encouraging or saying that they need to kill a couple of members of Congress in order to put the fear of God in the rest of them? Yeah, he's claiming that's an AI thing. We know better.
That motherfucker doesn't even know what AI is. It's Eric Swalwell and Jerry Nadler, and it was around the time of the January 6th committee, and they were going after Donald Trump about him giving clemency or whatever, or commutation that he gave Roger Stone. This is some creepy, evil-looking motherfucker. Have you ever seen the depositions he's been in when he's been taken to task? His face contorts. He's just a weird fucking looking guy. And somebody...
Oh, he's nuts. He's nuts.
Somebody needs to put that motherfucker down. I mean, when that audio came out where he is essentially asking to have 2 members of Congress assassinated, you can't shade that anyway. He said what he said. He was very specific about it. And now the Secret Service and the Capitol Police are investigating it. This may be the one thing over and above anything that might happen with the insurrection that will take Roger Stone down, because you just can't do that shit.
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, I thought we had him there, but no, Trump. If it were up to me, they would take away the presidential pardon thing, and the governors too. It's never used in the proper way. I mean, if you see a miscarriage of justice or something, reopen the case, relitigate it, bring in the new evidence. Screw pardons.
Yeah, maybe a pardon isn't the good choice. Maybe what a president can do is force them to retry it.
Yeah,
because
I'd be fine with that. Because
so often, people are in jail and they claim to be innocent, and they want to get a new trial, and they can't get a new trial, and they can't get a new trial. I mean, I don't think under any circumstances where somebody has committed a crime and it's been proven in court that they should get a free pass. That's that whole pardon thing makes no fucking sense. If no one is above the law except the guy who gets a pardon from his buddy who happens to be in the White House, that kind of negates the whole fucking concept of nobody being above the law.
Exactly. And, certainly not unlimited. I
No,
mean, various presidents pardon, different amounts, but it should not give them 10. I'll give them 10.
right.
Okay. If you can find 10 people who were egregiously wronged by being convicted when they were so obviously innocent, okay, good. You go for it. But Trump's talking about, pardoning all of the January 6th people who were convicted and sent to prison by juries. There is no doubt of their guilt and so forth. Not one Antifa member, by the way, not
No,
one BLM member.
no.
All MAGAs. And
But well, when you see a president who does the pardons, it should be a red flag when these pardons always end in the final moments of a term, when they
right.
can't take any heat from it. And this is Obama. This is everybody. They all do it at the last moment when they can't be reelected because they've run their term. That should tell you there's something shady with this bullshit.
Yeah, it's somewhere along the line a deal was made. I
Yeah.
mean, because these people don't deserve it for the most part. As a matter of fact, in most cases, with Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. These people are not good actors. They are just bad people. They have done bad things. Kushner's father, for
Yeah.
example, he got a pardon. Pretty much everybody involved with all of Trump's misdeeds got pardons, and some asked for them that didn't get them, like Matt Gaetz. He's denying he asked, but we have testimony by Cassidy Hutchinson and others that he did indeed ask more than once for a pardon and didn't get it.
Right.
So I'm not in favor of that particular thing. It goes back to the whole king crap.
Yeah.
Kings have that. I don't want a president who has that sort of power. No, I
Well,
forbid it.
well, and the thing about it is Donald Trump's not happy with the power of the pardon. Yeah, there you go. But you still have that fucking thing?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, it's nice, when you have
You
nice
never know
things,
when it'll come in handy.
right? When you have nice things, you want to take care of them. And it looks
That's
like you've
right.
done a good job with it. But not only does Donald Trump want to have the power of the pardon, he, and when I say this, I'm not talking literally. Well, maybe I am. He not only wants the power of the pardon, but he wants the power to choose to execute somebody, whether
Yeah.
literally or figuratively, using the IRS against people, using Congress or the DOJ against people. These are all things he did when he was president. And these
Right.
are things that he'll ramp up if he were to become president again. And I don't know why people aren't a little nervous about that. I think a lot of people are, but there's still enough fucks that will vote for him and not realize they're voting against their best self-interest. But Donald Trump is a crazy, dangerous motherfucker. And then that's what I was getting at before. If he's perceived as being very dangerous and destructive to this country, and if he ever got close to the presidency again, I'm afraid what people might do. Because, when you got kids and grandkids, and you think somebody's going to be fucking with the future of your kids and grandkids, that's usually a bridge too far for most people.
Yeah. And I certainly don't advocate violence at all. But I know people who probably would consider that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we got a lot of people talking about the ballot situation, the 14th Amendment, the Supreme Court in Colorado, and now the Supreme Court is going to hear it. And I got a lot of people worried about that. The funny thing about it is this whole 14th Amendment effort, it never really excited me too much. I mean, it'd be great if the
No,
Supreme Court said, yeah, take them off the ballot, and then it's all said and done. But I never thought that it was really going to work, to be
no,
perfectly
me
honest with
neither.
you.
Me neither. I never thought the Supreme Court would let it work.
Well, some people are saying, well, then that would mean the Supreme Court stepped over the boundaries and decided an election. And I thought, well, didn't they already do that with
Yeah.
Gore v. They
Yeah,
already did that.
they made some mistakes there. And people just decided, okay, we'll let it go this time, I
Right.
guess. But I mean, there was no reason they should have been allowed to take up the case, quite frankly, because the election was still going on. They were doing a recount,
Right.
and that should have been allowed to go right ahead. I'm sorry, they overstepped their bounds, and um, nobody else stood up and said, no, no, this is not, nobody brought a case to you. This is not a case.
Right.
There is nothing for you to adjudicate here. Go away.
Well, and that's the thing. I think people think that in the last 3 or 4 years, the Supreme Court all of a sudden went to shit. But the Supreme Court's been doing some questionable things for decades, fucking decades. And there's always been some questionable decisions. And the grifting we're finding out about Clarence Thomas, if you think he's the first one to benefit from that, you're probably mistaken. And he's probably not just conservatives benefiting from it. The Supreme Court's been tainted for a long time. It's just that we hadn't heard about it. It's like some of the things we're hearing with the Republicans. A lot of this shit's been going on a long time. It's not till Donald Trump and his loud ass mouth that we're starting to hear about it.
Absolutely. I mean, the Rehnquist court, the all of those, they were not quite as bad in a way. Perhaps because the mix wasn't quite so one sided. But the Citizens United, for example, is
Yeah.
just flat out bad jurisprudence. It is insane that they give a legal fiction the same rights as you and I have. I am not a legal fiction. I'm a real person. The corporation is a legal fiction created for just a few reasons, and that it has rights. No, no, it
No,
doesn't.
no. I mean, and all the reasons are financial.
Yes,
That's all it is. Well, yeah, it's frustrating to see this. Just the name of the entity, Supreme Court, suggests that it should be above reproach. And
yeah,
what we're finding out is it's not only above reproach, it's despicable in many ways.
yeah. At the point where it becomes obvious, now it's always been that way, but where it becomes obvious that it is a purely political organization and their decisions are dependent upon who has the most votes, just like in the Senate or the House, then it loses its significance. It's
It does.
supposed to be an arbiter,
Right.
and one that relies on legal expertise, not politics. And yet it is purely political.
Well, and you were talking about when, Joe Biden wins in 2024 and hopefully the Senate and the House goes Democratic completely. That's the time we should be looking at stacking the Supreme Court to just kind of even things out and make it hopefully a little bit better. But there's one other idea that I think they should look at, and somebody suggested that there be term limits. These lifetime
Absolutely.
appointments are just asking for trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I thought she was the kind of person who should be on the court. She had earned her way on with a lot of legal wins. Her arguments were substantial and so forth. So yeah, she deserved to be there, but she didn't deserve to be there that long.
No.
And it was out of respect that they allowed her to continue to sit in that seat when she should have resigned and allowed Obama to replace her. That would have been the best thing to do.
Well, there should be term limits, at the very least, an age limit.
Mm-hmm.
Make it 70 or 75, and then they're gone.
And some have said let's stagger it so that Republican and Democratic president always get to appoint one or two. So we can do that with the terms, right?
Right.
Or at least make it more likely. I don't know that you could ever do it, but exactly right. But the idea that there is some balance. Right now, there is no balance here. There is uh, they can run roughshod over the quote liberal justices and do anything they want in theory. But if we get the Senate and the House and the presidency, then we can do things with the court.
Right, right, exactly. It would be, and now we have Donald Trump pretty much trying to coerce the Supreme Court regarding the 14th Amendment thing. We're waiting to hear what they say. And apparently Trump lawyers are warning Supreme Court of chaos and bedlam if states are allowed to bar him from the 2024 ballot. I don't know about you, that sounds like a fucking threat.
It is. It
And you're
definitely is. And in the same way, offering a judge, saying that you will give a judge a Supreme Court seat is could be considered bribery or a threat.
right.
Considering.
But doesn't that put the Supreme Court in kind of a bad condition, assuming they care about this? I don't know that they do. But if now they have to decide on this Colorado case, and they can make up excuses for whatever choice they make. But now that
Yeah.
Donald Trump has said this to them, if they side with Donald Trump, now the appearances that they've been kind of co-opted or they're siding with or deferential to Donald Trump, and they've already got all kinds of fucking problems in the first place. Does that not put them in a bad situation? Because they're all about appearances.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I would hope, but obviously, Clarence Thomas has no shame. I don't think Gorsuch does. I mean, he could be in hot water for a number of things that he's done.
Right.
But really, sending out. I'm sure he's the guy who leaked the decision on Roe v. Wade. I'm
No.
sure of it. That alone should disqualify. That should be grounds for impeachment.
Right.
But nobody's investigating it, certainly not the court. So we'll never really know, will we? But Gorsuch, Thomas, both are, to me, very vulnerable to impeachment, should be impeached.
Well, and Alito
Uh,
too.
and
Alito's
Alito, and Alito. Mhm.
uh,
So,
if I'm willing to bet based on how I've seen him behave and how he's dealt with these scandals, I have to question if Clarence Thomas is even in a right mind. I think he may be mentally diminished. I mean, nobody can be that immune to shame and exposure and then just act like nothing's there. Or he feels so protected by the Supreme Court that nobody can do anything to him that he's just doing a Donald Trump and acting like nothing happened.
yeah, I think it's probably the latter. I would like to see more. I would like to see Jenny Thomas indicted.
Yeah.
If your spouse is indicted, that might cause you cool your jets a little bit. I mean, she's obviously as vulnerable as Mark Meadows, as many of the others who are being indicted and are being tried. She certainly had a lot to do with the planning and execution of January 6th.
Well, and that brings up the thing I think everybody's waiting for, the imminent superseding indictments from Jack Smith in the Washington, D.C. case. I've been seeing people put on TikTok and other places that they've got a list of 10 people that were in a meeting
Yeah,
that seem like likely prospects for indictments. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene, like Gosar, like some of the others. And the problem with seeing things on TikTok and even YouTube and Instagram and such, some people just put out wishful thinking. They act as
yeah,
if they have some inside track. And I got to be honest with you, I sit here and do TikToks all day, every day, and I have, I hear what I hear and I analyze it and say what I say, but I have no inside track. Nobody's coming to me and say, "Hey, Mike." So when somebody on TikTok says, "Trust me, I know." You're sitting on a fucking farm in Kentucky. You don't know. You're making this shit up, and it irritates me when I see people doing that. Uh, um, But that superseding indictment thing does seem to be imminent. With all that's going on, he only indicted Donald Trump. The superseding indictments, the members of Congress has to be coming. The question is when? And I almost get the sense now, since we're getting so close, that he may not put out those superseding indictments until we're in the trial with Donald Trump or after the trial with Donald Trump. What are your thoughts about that?
I think you're probably right, and I think that's why he didn't do it. He didn't want to clutter things.
Right.
But let's say that Eileen Cannon and other things happen so that it looks like none of these cases are going to make it before election, which is possible.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but it is possible. If you're Jack Smith, you see you're stymied, you can't do that. Why wouldn't you then go after these guys? Number one, you'll clean out the House and get rid of their majority there, for one thing, which is a good thing. And you'll put these people in jail. Plus, you'll break the back of MAGA, because that's who these people are.
Right.
I mean, what was it? 8 people that got rid of McCarthy.
Right.
Overall, I mean, they joined with the Democrats to get rid of him, but still, if you can get rid of those people, that's all to the good. And they're certainly guilty. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I would think it would be a slam dunk. They have the phone records. They have that they now have that have been given to them. So they've won, in court to have access to those things.
And I have some problem with people that think that if one or all court cases don't end by the election, that it is catastrophic. And I don't think so. I mean, what Donald Trump is counting on is winning the election and getting out of all these crimes. And he's just not going to win the election. There's nobody who
that's
can
the
convince
important
me.
thing.
He's not going to win.
I think that's why he's running it all. To be honest with you.
Yeah, no question.
That and payback. I mean, he's really into payback, so that's certainly one of his motivations. But he went in earlier
Real
than
early,
you would
2
have
years
expected.
early.
Yeah, so that was the reason that he went in so early. So all I have to say is, off with their heads.
Well, if his one shot is to win the presidency and get out of his crimes, that's a hell of a long shot. That is a Hail Mary pass that's going to drop short. It's just not going to work. As I've said before, he lost in 2020 by 7 million votes. He's done nothing to gain votes since then. He's done nothing. He's lost votes. Whether he'll even be standing when it comes to the nomination, I don't know. If that's his one shot, I would not want to be him, because it does not look good for him.
It's interesting you used the phrase Hail Mary. The Republican, once again, I can't think of his name, who was saying that they need to basically censure all of the MAGAs and remove them from their committees assignments and so forth. He said, what we have in the Republicans in the House now is a group of people who want to throw a Hail Mary on every play. They do not understand that governing is negotiation, compromise. And they want to throw that Hail Mary every time, and you don't win football games doing that. So there is some rationality in the Republican Party, at least that much. So I'm hoping that this is a signal that there's a turning of tides here.
I think it is. I think it is. Well, Ed, we're going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for coming back. We missed you, and now you're back and back in the fold, and we'll go through some legal process to make sure that you don't miss any more.
Okay, one more thing.
Sure.
Watch out for COVID. It's on the rise. It's 10% of the deaths in hospitals in Kentucky right now are from COVID. It's on the rise in Oklahoma and other places too. So use caution.
Absolutely.
When you're in crowds, wear a mask. I'm wearing a mask again. Sorry, I'm sorry if it troubles people, but I'd rather not die. I
told this on the podcast recently. A couple days ago, I was in a casino out west of the metro here. My wife and I go out there a lot. And as I'm walking by, there's a guy sitting at a slot machine. He's all bundled up. He's got rubber gloves on. He's got a mask on. And he's sitting there. And I look at him. I go, okay, cool. You want to be safe. I appreciate that. And then he looks at me and goes, hey, you're on TikTok. I go, yeah, I'm on TikTok. He goes, I watch you all the time. I agree with most of what you say. I go, most of? but then I put out my hand to shake his hand, and he says, oh no, I'm a germaphobe. And he put out his elbow. So we touched elbows. I said, hey, thanks for watching, and good luck with the slot machine. He goes, I watch you all the time. I go, thank you. I appreciate it immensely. But there are people out there. I'm seeing more masks and people concerned. And I just want to say, the people who say masks don't work, as much as I hate wearing a mask, the times I did have to wear a mask, the whole time wearing a mask, I didn't get one fucking cold. So and I just recently had a cold. So maybe if I'd been wearing a mask, it wouldn't have been a problem. But I'm not going to shit on anybody that wants to protect themselves, especially if they have some other physical problems where it might hurt them if they do get some kind of COVID or cold.
Yeah, during the COVID years, almost nobody died of flu. This year it's rampant again. So yeah, it makes a difference.
It definitely makes a difference. Well, Ed, thanks very much. We'll talk to you next week. Hopefully we'll set that up. The people watching and listening, thank you for taking time out of your day to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.